Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us to discuss this issue of reverse mortgages. I'm here with my colleague, Leslie Varner. My name's Joanne Gallipald. We're both attorneys at Coast to Coast Legal Aid. And Leslie and I have both received, I think, a lot of questions from our clients regarding what exactly is a reverse mortgage? How does it work? What are the impacts, the financial impacts to our seniors in the community? What are the purposes of a reverse mortgage? So we wanted to put together just a little presentation, at least for you, so we can go through what a reverse mortgage is and what you can expect if you decide to try to utilize a reverse mortgage. We're not going to be able to cover everything there is to cover on this topic because it's pretty broad, but we tried to at least narrow the issues for you so you can have an understanding of what it is and how you might be affected by it if you choose to pursue it. So I'm just going to give you a very brief bio about myself, and then I'll let Leslie give you a little biography about herself so you can understand where we're coming from when we're providing this information. For myself, I graduated law school in 2008. I worked in private practice for about 12 or 13 years, specializing in the area of mortgages and real estate related matters. And then I came over to Coast Legal Aid to assist our seniors with the same issues. So I think I have a very good framework to be able to present this information to you. At the end of our presentation, you're going to see our website for Coast to Coast Legal Aid, as well as my contact information and Leslie's in case you have any questions or concerns that you'd like us to address after we already conclude our presentation today. So feel free to do that. And Leslie, I'm going to kick it to you so you could say just a couple of things about yourself as well.
Thank you, Joanne. My name's Estelle Varner. I think it pops up on the screen when I'm looking at it, but my friends call me Leslie. Leslie is my middle name. I grew up honestly at legal services program, specifically Broward County's program. And so I'm very excited about presenting this presentation with Joanne to discuss the reverse mortgage process. I did private practice like Joanne. I represented property management companies. So it's really great for me to be back representing individuals, private citizens within the mortgage context. So I'm happy to be a part of that again. Okay, let's get started.
Thank you. All right, so what exactly is a reverse mortgage? My understanding from speaking with a lot of my clients is they don't know or they're very skeptical about what a reverse mortgage is. So in essence, it's a home loan. It's not the same type of loan that you would expect to get when you're purchasing a home. When you buy a house, you have to fill out a promissory note and a mortgage. And then you make payments on the note, which include principal and interest usually, until that note is paid in full, and then you own the home outright. A reverse mortgage is kind of the inverse of that. It's a situation where you can convert the equity in your home that you've already accrued into cash. You use that equity to pay off your existing mortgage, and you can live off of the remaining equity in the property. And if that's confusing, I'll try and break it down a little bit more on the next slide. But the goal in a reverse mortgage is to try to make it easier and more affordable for seniors who have maybe experienced a reduction in income because they're no longer working or they've retired to stay in their home and make their money stretch a little bit further. So Jeff, will you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So as I was saying, when you're trying to apply for a reverse mortgage, what will occur is that a reverse mortgage specialist is going to review the amount of equity you have in the home. They need to see that there's enough equity to pay off any existing mortgage you have on the loan, and then to ensure that there's enough remaining funds to pay you out, for the remainder of the time you might be residing in the property. If you own the home free and clear, then you might be able to expect to get all the equity out of the house, minus the fees and the costs associated with the closing. The older you are at the time you try to take out the reverse mortgage, the more money you're going to have access to. And like I was saying, if you compare this with a conventional forward mortgage where you take a loan to purchase a house, there you would pay the principal and interest every month until the loan is paid in full. Here, the loan's going to accrue interest over time, but you're not making payments on that interest. It doesn't come due until you leave the home or you pass away, or if there's some other breach of the mortgage agreement and you end up in foreclosure, it can be accelerated. But we're going to get into some of those issues as we go throughout the slides. So Jeff, next slide, please. There are typically two types of reverse mortgages: home equity conversion mortgage, which is backed by the FHA. They're insured by the government. That's what we see the vast majority of, especially here at Coast to Coast Legal Aid. There are proprietary reverse mortgages, but they're typically, seen on very high value homes, and they're just backed by the private loan companies that own them. And now, Leslie, I'm gonna send it over to you to kind of talk about who might qualify, some of the pros and cons, and what happens to the disbursements of the equity.
Okay, Jeff. So yeah, there are obviously eligibility requirements, not only for reverse mortgage or forward mortgages, but also for reverse mortgages. With reverse mortgages, the borrower must be at least 62 years of age or older. So it targets our senior citizen population. The borrower also must own their home outright, or at least have a substantial percentage of equity in their home. Most lenders require that the equity ownership is at least at 50%. Also, the borrowers must reside in the home. It must be their primary residence in order to establish eligibility for a reverse mortgage. And it has to be a single family home or a condominium. It can't be manufactured home, which would not qualify for a reverse mortgage. The property also, like Joanne mentioned earlier, there must be substantial equity. Traditionally, the borrower owns the home outright free and clear, but in most instances, it has to be a situation where the borrower has substantial equity, at least 50%. Thank you, Jeff. Now, the borrower can elect various types of situations in which they receive the proceeds of a reverse mortgage. Most commonly, it is a lump sum payment, and as it suggests, it is a lump sum payment. So the borrower receives a single payment once the loan goes through the loan closing process. There's a situation in which the borrower can elect to receive monthly payments over the course of the reverse mortgage, and that type of disbursement is referred to as a tenure. The borrower also can choose to receive the proceeds of the reverse mortgage over a term of months, and that is referred to as a term. Or they can receive a line of credit similar to a HELOC, a home equity line of credit. Jeff? The loan, reverse mortgage loan, like Joanne indicated earlier, doesn't become due and payable. There are certain specific events at which point the loan becomes due and payable. Principally, it's when the borrower passes away or dies. And at that point, the heirs they have a few options. They can either repay the loan and keep the property. They can sell the property and keep the proceeds from the sale and distribute it pursuant to, if the borrower had a will, they obviously do that pursuant to the will, or if not, it's addressed in the borrower's probate estate. Or they can do what's called a deed in lieu of foreclosure. And it's a document that principally gives the property back to the lender through a deed in lieu instead of the lender pursuing a foreclosure action. The loan also becomes due if the borrower is not principally residing in the property. I mean, the reverse mortgage, the primary obligation on the part of the borrower is that they actually live in the property. So if the property no longer becomes the borrower's principal place of residence, then it triggers for the lender the obligation on the lender's part to pursue foreclosure proceedings. The loan also becomes due, like I said, if the borrower does not reside in the property for at least 12 consecutive months. And what the lender does annually, the lender requires of the borrower to sign a certificate of occupancy. And that just confirms that the property is the borrower's principal place of residence. Outside of that, if the borrower isn't executing a certificate of occupancy, typically if the lender is sending mail to the borrower and that mail is being returned to the lender, it's a strong suggestion that the property is not the borrower's principal place of residence. So that might trigger a foreclosure process. Outside of that, the mortgage becomes due and payable if the borrower violates the mortgage covenants, the obligations that the borrower agreed to at the commencement of that reverse mortgage transaction. And that usually entails the borrower is required to pay insurance to keep the property adequately insured, to pay property taxes, and to also maintain the property, to ensure that the property is properly maintained. There are pros and cons to everything. There are pros and cons, obviously, to a reverse mortgage. Some of the pros in terms of a reverse mortgage is that there's no restrictions upon how the borrower spends the mortgage proceeds. They can go on an elaborate trip. They can buy a Lamborghini. They can do whatever they want to do with those funds. So that, and for seniors it's 62 years of age, so I think our community is living well beyond that, but for most seniors, it can be a fantastic day for them or a couple of days for them, to spend those funds. Secondly, they can stay in the home without the burden of having to pay mortgage payments, so they can just live in the home without having that burden that most of us experience, either whether you're paying rent or you're paying a mortgage. And the loan does not require payment until the last surviving borrower leaves the home, which includes a spouse, a non-borrowing spouse. Also, the borrower can stay in the home as long as they continue paying, like I mentioned earlier, the property taxes, the insurance, and that they maintain the home in good standing. The reverse mortgage proceeds are also tax-free, which is an added benefit to the borrower. And earlier, I said that the borrower can sell the property at any time. They can. Obviously, they can sell it, but they would all also have to pay any lien that's associated with the reverse mortgage. For most of our clients, seniors, most of our clients receive public benefits, or a lot of them, and Medicare benefits. The reverse mortgage does not affect their ability to continue to maintain those expenses. Also, even like after the borrower dies, if he has a spouse, typically the spouse is not included as a lien holder on the reverse mortgage. The non-borrowing spouse has the ability to continue to reside in the property. And at the point that the borrower passes away, their heirs have the ability to purchase the home at 95% of the appraised value, or pay off the balance, whichever is left. There are cons associated also with reverse mortgages, and some of them, includes the equity in the home, because the borrower is taking out the equity in the home. So obviously, as the equity decreases and the amount owed on the home increases. So there's that inverse relationship. The loan balance will also increase over time, excuse me, as the interest accumulates. And if the borrower can't reside in the home, there may be various reasons. Typically with our seniors, it's due to health. So if the borrower has to go to a nursing home or assisted living facility, at that point, they're not residing in the home for a 12-month consecutive period as required pursuant to reverse mortgage obligations. So they may be subject to foreclosure in that instance, which would mean that the heirs inherit less, and the taxes and insurance, if the borrower is not maintaining that, becomes due and payable. We welcome questions at this point. We have our contact information listed here. Whether and Joanne and I both welcome your questions. You can email us our questions at the information provided here, or give either of us a call.
Yeah, thank you so much, Leslie. Sorry about that. I didn't mean to speak over you. I just wanted to thank you for helping me present the information in such a, I think, was a concise way, but we know it's a lot of information to put out there in a short period of time. So of course, we're always happy to address any questions or concerns anybody might want to, send our way via email or phone call. So thank you so much for your time, and we're always available to take your calls and questions.